You bitch.
Okay, I guess we're starting the video that way. So, you remember how we have threefold perpetual check is illegal and fourfold repetition is a draw?
Yeah.
So let's look at this scenario. This is the current board state, no repetitions prior. Here, check. Here, check. Here, check. Here, I believe that would be the third check. In 1, 2, 2, and then this is illegal, right?
Mm-hmm.
However, you could, for example, find another square to check on and keep chasing the king around, and you, in theory, may have more squares to continuously check the king when he's here than the king has alternate squares to go to without a draw occurring. Now, you wouldn't do that here because you win.
This is a definite loss for that king.
Yeah, but there are scenarios where this king is in a position where if white ever gets a move that's not check, he loses.
Mm.
So you can keep chasing with something like a queen or a Kheshig or most notably Aurora and the eagle in Holy Empire, right? Because they move like a queen or an Amazon respectively, but capture as a knight. So they can keep checking the king from a distance from a ton of different squares, right?
Mm-hmm.
They feasibly can get to this king square 8 different ways when he's here. And even though the third one is illegal, they still check from there twice, and the king may not always have more than like one other square to go to. And then all sorts of stuff can happen where you can force repetitions. That's the funny thing. Under our current rules, the player who is chasing can sometimes force a draw, even though perpetual check is illegal. Because the perpetual position can be one that's not check. For example, this one. On the white king's turn, he goes here, and it's there. And we thought that's how it came from shogi. Now let me walk you through what the shogi rules actually are. The shogi rules are when a third perpetual occurs, you check to see if one player had every turn from one player was a check. And if so, that player loses. And if both players every turn was a check, it's a draw. And if either player, if both players had moves that weren't check that was a perpetual, it's a draw.
Mm.
So it's essentially
More complicated.
It's more complicated, but it prevents this specific scenario that we're talking about here.
Mm.
And this interesting nuance, therefore, is something that only exists in our game, and is unintuitive to new players.
Yeah, but those rules would also be unintuitive to new players.
Not necessarily. If you say the words perpetual check is illegal, and it doesn't matter whether whose turn it is, the player who was checking every turn for the perpetual can't do that. You know? Or they lose when the perpetual occurs if every turn in between the perpetuals was a check. That's how shogi does it. They don't care about legal moves versus illegal moves. They just call it a loss when the perpetual occurs if one player only did checks.
Okay.
Which is interesting because that's also... You can't say, oh, ending the game doesn't make sense here because that's literally what you're doing when it's a draw. I think we should do what shogi does and avoid the weird scenario. Because we just misunderstood the rules. We were trying to use what shogi does.
Well, I don't have an argument against it.
It also matches the Shang-Chi chasing rules closer and the Zhongyi chasing rules closer.
Okay. Yeah, I don't have any arguments against it.
I don't either. That's the problem.
Well,
But-
if there are no arguments against it and only arguments for it,
Well,
with multiple...
the argument for it would be that weird case where somebody can force a draw with checks, but it's not a perpetual check. Because, they'd never get to the third perpetual check in those scenarios. They only do two checks, two checks, two checks, two checks from each position, but still loop around and force the king back to the same square multiple times while their piece is in that square. So you could envision a scenario with a Kheshig where you can force the king to this square for multiple spots while the Kheshig is checking from here, as an example, right?
Mm-hmm.
To get to that point. Or if it's protected, from here as well. And all of those squares could force the king there. And then you end up with the repetition on the not check turn. Because that's already 2, 4, 6 check squares, and that's 6 legal turns of check, and that's 6 is more than 4.
Okay. Well, that's an interesting win.
It's an interesting draw.
Draw, I mean, not win.
It could be cool. That would be the only reason to keep it, though. Is, this interesting interaction's worth having in the game. But it's very niche. It's unintuitive to players of every game we've included.
It would be pretty unintuitive for high level, even.
Yeah, because it's hard to keep track of where every combination of where pieces have been without a UI. It would.
Yeah, we're not planning on making this only online.
Yeah.
Only electronic.
How do you keep track of that over the board?
Yeah. Unless you get special light-up chessboards that keep track of every position.
But then we would have to make every person who wants to play our game buy the special chessboard. So.
And that would cost hundreds of dollars each, maybe even thousands, depending on the size and if it's in party mode.
Yeah.
And they would have to get the special light-up territories, too.
Don't get me started on keeping track of that shit in party mode.
Oh, that's thousands of dollars.
We're already having cost issues in party mode. I don't want to think about that right now.
Or you could just kind of touch screen Raspberry Pi. Which would only cost hundreds of dollars, but you'd have to buy both. Oh no, it could still cost thousands because you'd have to have multiple touch screens. That can detect where they're connected.
Can you think of a real argument that really works that this should be in the game?
Not really.
What about an argument against it? I'm just running through it one more time before I make a decision.
It's unnecessary and will cause confusion even in higher level. It's even it's a simple rule, but the nuanced cases that would come from it
Are wacky.
Would be too fucking much. There would be one player who fishes for this all the time, and nobody knows it because they don't realize that that's what he's going for. They don't remember that rule.
Yeah.
That one little thing.
This is a gotcha moment because you read the rule and it doesn't say that this can happen.
Yeah.
It's just kind of a consequence of the rules. Okay. I'm convinced. We're going to use the shogi rules. I will roll that out in the next few days. Probably later today. And I'll release this video too.